Raptors fans, it's 420. That would be like going into my mom's bedroom, okay? I don't want to go in there. I'm happy to take you in your mom's bedroom, but I'm not going in mine. Welcome back, Raptors fans. It is an awesome time to be a Hoops fan in general. The trade deadline is a super exciting time. It is an even more excited time to be a Raptors fan while the Raptors show all of these somewhat entitled teams that thought we would all be rebuilding and are sleeping on us how defensive first basketball can look. I'm Greg Hubbard, or Ghubbs for short. Welcome to the Clink, my humble home and prison during COVID. Before we go any further, I'm calling some of you guys out. If you've not hit the little bell and the subscribe thing and the thumbs up, you are a pervert watching me from the corner, giggling and getting sweaty. I need you to use your little finger and get over here and help me. Hit the notification button, hit the subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and give me some love.
Set your notifications.
Get your notifications, governor. This is not a thing where I just throw a bunch of trade things on the screen and say, hey, I like freaking Myles Turner. You can definitely contribute. I want your comments, your trade machine posts, your ideas in the comments below. You'll notice there's also timestamps in this video. This is a big rant, guys. I did a lot of research for this. And so you can skip ahead, skip behind if you don't want to listen to the ramblings. I totally get it. But if you're the type that wants to get into my mind and see where my brain is going, it's here for you. Cheers. Thanks so much for your support. It's an exciting time of year, but it is also a very scary time of year, as some of us found out when we were shooting the shit in the comments after I made a welcome back video for Delano Banton, but when he got back from his stint with the 905. We stumbled onto this awful thing, which was the very basic realization that every buyer in the NBA is also a seller. And we started getting scared of, what the hell, are we gonna sell Banton? We were saying, great to see Banton back, and then John says something like, hope we aren't shopping him, like to show him off for the trade deadline. And then a bunch of people are like, oh my gosh, don't even freaking say that. How could you say that out loud and bring it into existence by breathing it? It's seriously like walking into your parents' bedroom, seeing them totally like getting it on and not being able to erase the image from your mind.
Do your parents have sex?
I don't know.
They do. You ever walk in on your parents having sex?
No. I have not. I have not.
No.
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 Never.
I know better than go with my mama's on.
They might, yeah. I mean, I've never seen any evidence. Hey, Mom!
Parents in bed, but it's just 8 o'clock.
I can't even say it.
My dad was naked, and he like turned around and it was just like jumped silent. I'm like, oh my god.
They did find a box of condoms under my dad's bathroom sink.
He is dialed in.
Was like he fully erect?
It was like my mom.
I've got your toy boy.
Mouth-watering chicken of the north.
No. So it's just even like weirder.
Were they magnums?
I did not look like
Super up close.
Ew.
Oh no.
That seems natural.
It does, but I
Sex
just...
is very natural.
I hope my parents are having sex.
I hope they do. I hope they're boning right now.
Take that. I'm a huge YouTube star, and you're the one watching the videos. I get to say what I want. In fact, you don't get to just sit and watch. Tap the bloody icons, you pervert. You owe me some love here. And yeah, make no mistake, when we walk in here, there's gonna be things you don't wanna see. And if you're not ready, now that we've opened the door, to go in that room where your dad is totally banging your mom, and I think she's enjoying it. If you're not willing to go in there and watch Banton be traded, then I don't think you're ready to win a Larry, because a few years ago, I would not have moved DeMar, JV. We just saw the other night DeLon Wright. Like, I wouldn't have moved like, I would have been scared to do any of those things. I'd still have Kalo on my team, okay? So the thing is that if we want to win another Larry, it's hard for me too. I don't want to talk about trading Banton, but buy low, sell high. If you have not watched Warich's video on Malachi Flynn and how his value's low, then I can't help you. There's no point in trading Malachi. That's a player we can definitely develop. He's Freddie's Padawan, and he's clearly not at his ceiling. And he's $3 million. Fuck. Amazing. Look, you might have to throw Malachi into a deal, because another team covets him is just not going to make the deal without you throwing him in. But that's fine if you get what you're needing out of the deal. But we shouldn't be actively shopping guys that we know we can get a bigger return on later, especially when there's no pressure on us to move them. A concerted effort to just trade Malachi and actively shop him, what are you really going to get back right now? It's a hot take, huh? It's a din. It's hot in hot takes.
Get that out. Bam's overrated. Like, straight up. I gotta say it, Bam's overrated. Are you about to tell me he's not an all-star? Oh.
Hot take. In the hot take.
You see, he's making fun of my take from earlier. Kobe Hero, as Paul Blunt's pointing at in the super chat.
Posterizes Dwight Howard. Oh, boy. To the basket that time. First cannot buy a triple. Kobe wheeling. What a play to Turiaf. And the foul.
And a chance to tie.
What a delivery. Rotation of Bryant. Buckle up for Kobe. Kobe Bryant just sucked the gravity out of the target center. What a play. The windmill slam. Long run out by Kobe Bryant. Behind the back. Oh! What did I just see? You just saw what Kobe does best, and that's bring people to their feet with a sensational play.
Yeah, you know what? Seeing the clips helps me actually see it now. I see the comparison. It's a din. It's hot in hot takes. Totally unrelated to the hot takes. Shout out Raptors Digest.
I would have to agree with you and Gubbstown and Clink. That just sounds weird to say.
Shout out to, how do you pronounce it? Is it Chubbstown? Gubbstown?
Yeah, I don't know.
The Gubbs? Jubs? Town? Clink. Do I have the Charles Barkley here?
GT Jr. is like Clarkson with elite bot and D huge pickup. Keep in mind, we kind of got to get Gary Trent Jr. indirectly from the Gravis Vasquez trade. So is Gary Trent Jr.? Yeah, he is actually. He is in that trade tree.
It's pronounced Gubbstown. It's admittedly weird. The super chats are my pleasure. Thank you for building such a strong community and giving me personally years of enjoyment on YouTube as a Raptors fan. Cheers to Raptors Digest. Well done, guys. And I'm looking forward to live stream playoff games on your pod. Go Raptors. With the hot takes and the shoutouts out of the way, let's get in your mom and dad's room and see what's cooking. You guys sure about this? Once we go in, it's your mom. Okay, I'll open the door, but let's go over the rules.
Nothing's happening! Oh my god!
Now, like most of you, this is just a hobby for me. It's bread and circuses. But I take my Raptors basketball seriously. So I'm not interested in throwing out some fantastic trade ideas. I'm interested in actually trying to predict what my beloved Raptors will do at the trade deadline. So I've put together a couple checklists for us to start exploring the trade deadline in such a way that we as a community try and follow the cookie crumbs to figure out what we think the Raptors will do. Buyers always have to sell something. We're going to start out with discovering who we are as a franchise. What does our core give us that gives us an advantage over other talented squads who we are going to have to defeat to win our next Larry? What do we already have that gives us an advantage to getting there? Second, what do we have right now and how long do we have it? We're going to have to look at our salary cap and our contracts. What are we missing in order to challenge for the next title? That's like our wish list. Number 3, what specialized tools do we still need to beat those same teams in order to provide not just adequate numbers, but also competent depth? Fourthly, what assets should we strive to retain, and is anyone superfluous? Do we have anything that we can simply use? Like, we got tons of that. We'll give you one of our 5 Bantons, right? What do we have that's extra? Just as importantly, who has what we need and how much is the asking price? Number 5, what are the rules that govern us and how can we best capitalize on them? I've had fantasy teams in all sports, and I have never had so much fun as I did once I started with the NBA. And it's because of this amazing soft cap that the NBA has. And I find that as a Canadian, a lot of fans don't understand how the soft cap works. In this video, in the timestamps below, you're going to be able to scoot ahead to certain concepts that you're going to need to understand in order to stand a chance at making smart trade suggestions. So what can we do as a franchise using these rules? And just as importantly, how can we manipulate them to capitalize? And then lastly, guys, number 6, what move or series of moves can we make that will win us a Larry? And we have to live by the mantra that no one is truly untouchable. Tricky. You gotta have a lot of stomach to do that. I don't think I would. Could you trade away DeMar or Kalo or Jonas? I'm not sure that I would have. So I'm not sure I'd be wearing a ring. And at the end of the day, we have to remember that these exciting rookies are amazing, but Larrys are better. Larrys are the goal. So like all good lists, I'm gonna suggest that we start with number 1. Who are we? Okay, so in order to figure out where the Raptors are gonna go as buyers or sellers, we need to identify what is Raptors basketball. Number 1, what's our physical and cultural identities? On this channel, we've discussed our physical identity as long arm monsters, or ironically short for lambs. And I like this term lambs because it really represents long arm monsters. It's our brand of small ball that we're playing. And what it does is it embraces what's on our roster already and says, hey, the other teams are going to kick our ass if they have an elite big. What the Raptors front office and coaching staff have done is said, okay, so we don't have a traditional large center. We're going to actually turn that into an advantage. We're going to make all of our guys marathon men. And if you haven't watched my last video, you should definitely watch it. You want to understand this concept of marathon men. But we're basically going to let their big have a big game. But they're going to work so hard for it that they're not going to be able to compete the whole game. While that big man's off the court, we suddenly become big by committee and control the matchups. Our guys are going to be able to play 48 minutes, sometimes 53 in triple overtimes, and run the floor like crazy. So that's our physical identity. What's our cultural identity? And I'm gonna say it comes from the years where Kyle and DeMar memories played fully bought in, fully committed basketball under the Dwayne Casey regime, and that led to banners in Scotiabank Center. And that type of mentality is what all of the young guys witnessed when we won the chip in 2019, when we were led by 2 ring bearers, the very underrated Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard, plus even the likes of Pat McCaw and Chris Boucher on the bench, who had seen how you win at the dance by watching some very key veterans, aka like Steph Curry, Draymond, Clay. You know what I mean? Like, don't undersell what Pat McCaw and Chris Boucher brought to that locker room in 2019. So in summary, our identity is long arm monsters who believe in be ready, next man up, team first, everybody eats, always D, always hustle, and the right kind of swagger. If you don't understand the concepts of marathon men, or run precious run, or passing on culture and experience with our Sherpas, or the right kind of swagger, you can check out those videos on my channel. And the other concept you need to kind of understand is big by committee. So they have the biggest player on their team, but if you add up our combined heights and weights, we're bigger, which because they're big is always the last person up and down the floor, we are in a position to always dictate the mismatches when we are on offense. So we do something, and this is an important concept, we control what we can by playing defense first. So we hear this all the time. We hear, it's almost like a cliche, defense first, we get our offense from our defense. But why defense first? Why does defense travel? And why does it help on the road? Well, it has to do with controlling what you can. You can't predict what they're gonna do on offense, but you can control your defense. You can put the effort in, you can hustle, you can take no plays off. That's all controllable. And when you dig in on those things, it is proven, even on the road, that teams can then get stops. And when you get stops, you want to be ready to go by controlling that and our hustle, right? Those are the two things we can control. And if members of the team don't control them, they get called out by the coaching staff.
Nope.
You got Ron Day.
Nope. Nope. Those guys. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but those guys have not understood A, how hard we play, B, our schemes, that defense is a priority.
Those things lead to opportunities. Those opportunities lead to an advantage to control time and space. So in what our youngsters like Banton and Precious are learning is pace doesn't mean fast all the time. So they're still playing very fast. And what the coaching staff is doing a good job of is treating them like rare wild horses, where we want to tame them a little bit, but we don't want to take those special things out of their game that give them an advantage against those same traditional bigs that they're going to be playing against. And opportunities are precisely the analytic we are looking to exploit. We are just looking to have more chances than them. And if we get our percentages up eventually, it's going to be landslides, guys, because it's working already. And our shooting percentage and our free throw percentage are trash right now. It's going to get even better than it is already. We're going to not only make the game predictable by playing defense, but we're going to limit our own movement on defense. So we're going to switch as much as we can. The smallest number of long arm monsters we have on the court at any given time so far this season is 3. So those 3 guys switch anytime. Ideally, we don't have them switching with Fred, and Freddie plays almost like a box in one, covering their best player who he can handle as a guard. But by the time they get to matchup number 2, you're dealing with Gary Trent Jr. if you're dealing with our starting lineup. And sometimes we go to 4 long arm monsters. So our starting lineup, I consider to be 3.5 long arm monsters because Gary's big for his position. But once we get to 4 and we take either Gary or Freddie off the court and substitute it with like a Boucher or a Chua to go with our bigs, now we're playing 4, sometimes 5 long arm monsters, and the matchups just become like glaring. Scottie's breakout game where he got 27 points, he and OG could have got anything they wanted in the paint in that game. So just keep in mind that when opposing bigs have big games against us, it's because we're letting their bigs get those touches in our paint. We're doing what's called hanging pawns in chess. We're saying, okay, your big can score tons of points this game, but every time he comes to our end of the court, we're gonna make him go in the paint and work hard to get those points. And then the moment he scores them or misses, we are going to be running the other way. So we're going to tire him out. This is Raptors game plan. So guys, does it make sense to go out and get a traditional big that can't keep up with our pace? Why would we want that? Doesn't make sense. I'm not expecting a traditional big to come our way in the playoffs. Tell me if I'm wrong. All right, that brings us to number 3. Repetition breeds habit. We are going to run the puke in our sleep. Jackie Moon, Monix, and the Tropics are our inspiration guys. We want our guys to be automatic and subconscious.
I want you to be brain dead, gentlemen. We are running this until we puke. Until we puke is not a figure of speech. We are literally going to puke.
What does he mean by literally?
You'll notice when Freddie comes around a screen, he's not deciding to shoot right then. He already decided to shoot at the beginning of the season. The moment he gets daylight, same with Gary Trent Jr., he does that little like forward and then hop back to the 3-point line and drain it. Those guys already decided that they were going to shoot way back then. So now it's just a matter of them shooting. And as you can tell as of late, they believe they're going to hit every shot. We want to use our athleticism to exploit matchups against their puny guards. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is when you actually look at the 5 matchups across the court, when we play 4 to 5 long arm monsters, even if they have the biggest player on the court with their traditional big, we outbig them. So if we dictate the pace by using our defense to make the game predictable, we can run into matchups that are favorable for us by using screens and off-ball cuts. And then we suddenly have OG on their puny little guard.
Boom, baba, boom, baba. Boom, baba, boom, baba, boom.
And every so often we'll bring in things like a Champagne who will come in and frustrate the shit out of them and deflate them by getting like 4 boards in 6 minutes on the offensive glass. And Boucher, same thing. It's just like, it's just deflating for the other team to play against us. And this is all because of playing D into transition. So we go right at these matchups and suddenly their big doesn't matter anymore. In fact, their big's exhausted. Might have 20 points in the first quarter, but they're exhausted. They're all starting to realize they don't want us in the first round. 7 games against us? Whew, that's ugly. In this last part that I feel is total Raptors identity, I see people getting frustrated after games that we lose all the time because they're like, why did Boucher, who can't hit his three-point shot, take that open three-point shot at the end of the game, and that's what lost it or whatever? But the thing is, the Raptors preach something and they want their guys to actually believe in themselves. So this last one is massively important. And it says, believe in yourself, believe in one another. Don't just take the open shot, make the open shot.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
They do not believe they should take the open shot. They believe they will make the open shot. And that's why the Raptors are starting to kick ass and gel. And at the beginning of the season, we were like, why is Precious Achiuwa taking the last second shot in the game? It's because the Raptors staff have been teaching every single guy on the roster, hey, if they give you something that you can just take it. That's Raptors. That's who we are. Let's get to number 2. What do we have right now, and how long do we have it for? What are we missing in order to be ready to challenge for a title? Well, there's only one thing we should look at for this. Let's take a look at our roster and payroll. Okay, so now buckle up, guys, because we've established who we are and we've established how we're gonna deal with teams that have opposing bigs that should intimidate us, like the Embiids and the Aldridges and stuff like that. But now we know how we're gonna deal with them by fatiguing them. Now we can actually have some fun and talk about trades. Let's start to take a look at what we have on our team and what we're missing. And now the trade deadline becomes super fun. Even the buyout market becomes fun. So let's start taking a look at that. To do that properly, we need to unfortunately start talking about number 5, which is what are the rules that govern us and how can we capitalize on them? And this actually, I promise you, if you get your head around it, will be amazing fun. To do it, we're gonna have to start talking about the NBA salary cap. So don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through it. Let's take a look at that now. Okay, so we're just gonna start off with the basics. Let's start with blue. So in the NFL and NHL, you'll be familiar with the idea of a hard cap. Franchises can contract players, trade for them, whatever, as long as they don't exceed the cap. In the NBA, you can exceed the cap, but they actually have a hard floor. So teams that are tanking can't just be non-competitive. They have to actually have a minimum payroll. And so this year, that's 101 million, but it's always 90% of the cap. As you can see here, Oklahoma City is the only team truly operating below the cap right now. So be on the lookout for this, because the salary cap floor makes a whole bunch of trade proposals that you'll see online over the next few days complete fantasy horseshit. Teams cannot make trades such that they go below the salary cap floor. This floor is the reason guys like Doug McDermott, Thaddeus Young, and Zach Collins got massive contracts where people are shaking their heads. But the contracts make it so that those teams that are rebuilding operate above the floor. That's the whole purpose of them. And they're hoping that a guy like, say, Zach Collins suddenly has a great year and they can sell him for more money for another asset. Tricky, tricky. So that brings us to green. So as long as you operate from $101 million to let's call it $11 million, you can do whatever you need to do with contracts. If you want to operate above the soft cap, the $112 million, you actually can, provided you're tricky and do it in a legal way using what's called an exception. This is what makes the NBA so fun, is the tricky GMs. So GMs need to be tricky to get beyond the 112. So let's talk about the Raptors. The Raptors, as you can see here, are operating at $134 million right here for 2021-2022. So Masai and Bobby have used tricky ways of getting past the 112 such that they've positioned us a mere $200,000, I'd love to have that right now, below the luxury tax threshold. Why is that impressive? Well, there's 3 reasons. The first is that they've managed to legally get themselves so close to the luxury tax threshold without going over that it simply just shows how good they are, and it's a bit of a flex. The second is that they've managed to do so with Dragic on the books. That's 19 million that most teams were expecting us to want to either buy out or trade as a commodity, because expiring contracts are commodities for some teams. But the Raptors, basically by not extending Sam Dekker and staying below this yellow, have said to the rest of the league, we can end the season with Goran. We're under no pressure to move him, so if you want his contract from us, you're the one that's gonna have to pay, not us. The third reason is that provided they don't go past the 136 and change mark, there's no penalty for exceeding the cap. None whatsoever. In fact, there's ways to get paid. Okay, so most of you will recognize this game right here. We've all played it. When you go around, if you hit any bad things, you gotta pay to the free parking in the middle. And then when someone hits lands on free parking, they get all that money. In the NBA, the teams that operate above the luxury tax threshold pay into a kitty. They pay $3 for every dollar they are over the luxury tax threshold. Meaning, if they are over by $1 million, they put $3 million in a kitty. The teams operating below the luxury tax threshold, which includes the Raptors, get to split all that money. And there's rules about how it's split. But the basic principle is that if you operate below the luxury tax threshold, you can get paid to keep a guy like Goran Dragic. So is there pressure to buy him out? No, because who is on this list is calculated at the end of the year. Buy him out would be to save a couple $1 bucks, but we're gonna get that couple $1 bucks from the upper echelon teams. Where it becomes interesting is if the Raptors decide to use the Dragic contract to go out of the green and into the yellow. That's where trades become very interesting for the Raptors. And that's what I'm hoping we see, because the core of the team looks solid, so we might be entering a luxury tax era in Toronto very soon. And the ownership group has been very clear that they trust Bobby and Masai to decide when to do so. But they expect results if we go there. Okay, so if we've got the luxury tax and we keep breaking the rules in reasonable ways, we can have a payroll of infinity in theory. What is this? The luxury tax apron. The luxury tax apron is the hard cap, but it only applies to teams that trigger certain rules. So they're still going above the cap legally, but they've done certain things to trigger this. And I'll show you the list of what they are quickly, and you can refer to it yourself. Okay, so if you're interested, here are those clauses, okay? So the clauses are, a team uses its biannual exception. Again, the word exception, right? A reason you can go above the cap of 112. If the team uses its taxpayer portion of the mid-level exception. So we have done that. That's our Kem Birch contract. Or if a team acquires a player via sign and trade, and we've done that. So we're on a list of teams where if you look at this last column here, hard cap, you'll see Toronto Raptors, we have a check mark. So we have a hard cap this year, okay? So we have a hard cap of 143 million, which is the apron. So for this year, we can't exceed 143. Now, we'd be paying out the ass. Think about it. If you paid from 136 to 143, that's roughly $7 million. You'd be paying $21 million in penalties to give it to the shittier teams. And essentially when you do that, you're basically paying other teams money to get better and beat you. So the NBA salary cap is super cool because it encourages the bottom teams to start competing with the top teams. And it makes it a penalty to the top teams who exceed the luxury tax threshold because they actually are making their competition tougher to beat and paying them to do so. Cool league. Let's get back to our roster. Which one? Okay, thank God. Whew. The math is over, right? But at least now we're gonna be a little bit better at detecting bullshit when we smell it in the trade rumor mill air, right? So we can move forward. The nice thing about our list is that it goes kind of quickly from here. Because number 2, where we need to look at our roster to see what holes we fill, kind of goes hand in hand with number 3. What specialized tools do we need in order to provide adequate and competent depth? Number 4, what assets should we strive to retain and is anyone superfluous? who has what we need and at what price. And number 6, the golden rule here, what move or series of moves gets us to a Larry? No one is truly untouchable. Exciting rookies are awesome, but Larrys are better. Okay, so those mantras kind of go hand in hand. So now we're going to take a look at our roster and we're going to discuss those things in their entirety to determine what we can expect to see at the trade deadline from the Raptors. So let's take a look at their roster. Because all right, so we've done all this theory. Now let's have some fun. Let's take a look at what matters, our roster. Let's figure out our assets and our wish list for what we'd like. As far as assets, I have to say what I like about what the Raptors organization has done is that there's no players that don't fit our culture and what it is to be a Raptor. So they've done a good job identifying what they're aiming to do. And I'll just remind you, that's the first one that we talked about, physical and cultural identities. So long arm monsters, lambs, who believe in, be ready, next man up, team first, everybody eats, always on D, always hustle, the right swagger. Okay, so all of those things, you can go back and check what is Raptors basketball and the timestamps if you want to review those. But I'm just gonna keep moving and say that the Raptors have done an incredible job of making sure all of our players kind of fit that identity.
I feel like I can do it all. I can get downhill, I can play make, I can create. I bring winning culture. I bring a winning impact right away. I have a good communication for a team where I could talk defensively, so I'm very unselfish. I really don't care. I'm gonna give it all. I just bring the winning mentality. I'm a winner. I help teams win, and I feel like that's why they should bet on me. I feel like I'm one of the best prospects in this draft, and I feel like with me on your team, then you just instantly get a lot better from that.
Okay, Kate Cunningham.
Like seriously, could we get a more perfect player out of the draft? It's just ridiculous that people were even discussing him being a bad pick. Now, because all of our guys like that, we're bound to have some things that are superfluous. If I had to name a couple guys that kind of do similar things on the court, I'd say that Delano and, for instance, Utah, for me, could be interchangeable. I like Delano's ability to handle the ball with speed, even though it needs to be reeled in and tamed a bit. So is Utah superfluous for me? Is Svi superfluous? His contract, we snagged him by guaranteeing him 2 years last year. That's a contract I always thought we were going to look to pair with one of our special moves that we'll talk about, those trade exceptions. Is Malachi Flynn superfluous? Is Kem Birch's mid-level player exception superfluous now that Precious has come out of his own? And the answer to some of these things is no, because you want depth on your bench. But can we get a missing piece, something that puts us over the hump? Well, let's talk about what we think we're missing. A lot of you guys say centers, but I feel like I've done a good job with showing you the marathon men that these minutes are not by accident. It's not because he couldn't play Malachi, it's that we're training to outrun the other teams. So does it make sense to go get a standard old big for $17 million a season like Myles Turner, who's not going to be able to keep up? Or a Mo Bamba, same thing. Because there's two kinds of stretch bigs. And the kind we are trying to put on our roster are the kind that run like deer. So the Kelly Olynyk's, the Plumlees, that's who we're trying to put on our roster. Stretch bigs are not just big men that can shoot three balls. They can stretch the floor a little bit because the opposing big man has to come out to guard them on the perimeter, or the other team has to switch, which creates the mismatch. That's a stretch big. But the stretch big the Raptors are favoring is a totally different kind. The moment the ball hits the rim, they're either rebounding, collecting the ball, or they're already outletting in transition, outrunning their matchup to create mismatches at the other end. How many times have you seen Precious, Scottie, Banton, all these guys just grab the ball and go? Those are the stretch bigs we're looking for, and we'll teach them how to shoot the three ball later. What we want is thoroughbred deer running the court, making other big men tired. Here's like a quickie short list of what this might look like. You can see just above my head here, I've done a couple custom filters. So what I've done is I've said, I want players that are taller than 6'8", I think I did, but lighter than 240 or equal to 240. And what that's gonna do is, for those of you that think we need big men, this is now gonna be a list of the tallest big men that are also light. So you're gonna see some guys that just haven't filled out, like Pokashevsky, but then you're gonna see guys like Jay Huff, Bol, Taco Fall. These are all guys that stretch the floor with their speed. Like Willie Cauley-Stein to me is kind of the Jango Fett template in terms of frame that I'm looking for from a 7-footer. Like he's already filled out and he's still around 240 and he can run the floor like a deer. So for me, I'm not going over 240, but here's what you want to do. First, you want to sort by height, okay? And you want to get a guy from the top, but then I'm looking for specialized tools in the drawer. So then I'm actually going to sort by weight, and I'm actually going to find the shortest guys. So there's Horford, Bruno Fernando, Marquise Chris. Like there's a guy, like, are they done working with him? There's a Kongwu. We watched him 2 Atlanta games. Didn't he look fantastic? He's got a thick frame that can bang. And this is the type of frame we were looking for with Freddie Gillespie. Okay, so long wingspan, thick, guys like that. So take a look. You want guys at each end of the spectrum. Like we looked at Arturo. That wasn't a mistake. It's because he fills an interesting thing. Look at the frame. Arturo's frame, same as Robert Williams. So we're looking for bargain guys that are either tall and skinny that can run the court, or heavy on this list, but still like, you know, 6'9", 6'10". So that's our short list. So these are modern centers that can run the court. They're called stretch bigs. Stretch bigs are not just guys that hit threes. Let's take a look at another list using guards. So the way we're gonna set that up is we're gonna say their height is greater than or equal to, let's keep the 240 as our kind of like fat guy limit, but then we're gonna say height-wise, we're gonna put it between two things. So we're gonna do 2 heights. The first one is gonna be greater than or equal to, let's say 6. What do you think for a guard? Let's say 6'5", okay? So we're looking for guards that are higher than 6'5", and let's set our maximum height at roughly 6'7". So what this is gonna give us is a mix of traditional wings and guards, but we're gonna look to use these guys interchangeably at those positions. So ideally, it would be great to have someone that is tall and thick, but then what can we get at the 6'5" that's also 240? Because if you'll notice right away, look at the guys that are on this list. These are unique players. Like these are really interesting body types of guys that can go up against bigs from other teams, but they're not tall themselves. Okay, but they win offensive boards, and we're looking for chances on the glass. Look at OG's on there, and we are creating mismatches with OG. I guarantee you Scottie will be on here. I don't remember. Wait, I think he's 220. You see him there? There he is, Scottie Barnes. Okay, look at the guys on this list. And what we're looking for is any that are cheap or undeveloped. We're going for big by committee, right? Big by committee. So are any of these guys, our team's getting off of them? This is why Kevin Knox was such a good pickup for the Hawks. They were not going to re-sign Reddish anyway. They do this. Sadiq Bey. Like just interesting body types here. Duwawu Cabarro. Are they done trying him out? O'Shea Brissett was a neat one that we had. Okay, so Satoransky. These are interesting guys. Covington just went to the Clippers. There's Banton on this list. Kessler Edwards for Brooklyn. Now let's look at the short guys that are also fat. So now let's switch our maximum height to be like 6'5" as well. And let's sort by fat guys. So Justin Anderson, Indy. Keelan Martin, Indy. Malik Fitz, Utah. Terry Taylor, Brogdon, okay? Think about the mismatches Brogdon gets. It's a big deal. Isaac Okoro for Cleveland. What a draft pick he was. Great pick, Okoro. Nasir Little for Portland. Like, these are unique body types. And that's modern NBA. Old NBA would look for these guys, okay? The Jeremy Lambs and stuff. They're still usable guys. They're amazing, some of them. Really dynamic. But the guys you want to guard them are these guys because they can switch onto a bigger player as well. And ideally, what you're looking for is guys on this list that have the footwork to be able to guard these guys on the list, like the Halliburtons. This isn't baseball. We're looking for diamonds in the rough, and you can't teach a guy how to be 6'5" and 240 pounds, thick as a brick. You can teach him how to shoot threes. The stats guys are the guys that told us that Scottie Barnes wouldn't be able to shoot for a few years. He looks pretty good to me. We're not always looking for stats anymore in the NBA. We're looking for matchups, okay? Because those are gonna lead to opportunities for our team more than the other team. We're looking for unique frames, specialized tools in the drawer to go against particular matchups. That's what modern NBA GMs are doing, and I suggest we do the same thing. What are my goals with the team? Well, that comes down to contract window. So my contract window, in my opinion, is 2 to 3 years. So if you look at this, so this year's playoffs, I'm gonna call a learning experience where I'm gonna bind the guys. So my goal this offseason is not to blow this shit up probably, unless I can hit a home run. And we're gonna take a look at some home run balls. What should we strive to retain? For me, it's the whole core. If we obviously have a good thing, I'm not looking to blow up anything, but we are doing ourselves a disfavor if we don't look to buy low, sell high. And there are some names on our roster who were definitely lower value before the season started than they are now. Their stock has gone way, way up. We are gonna look at some trades where some rookies move. I don't think I'll do any Barnes trades. I just don't think I could stomach it, but I'd love to see yours. What do you think you can get for Scottie Barnes and a Goran Dragic contract, guys? Somebody show me some of those. Like, there's no way we're doing that shit, right? Okay? Please. That would be like going into my mom's bedroom, okay? I don't want to go in there. I'm happy to take you in your mom's bedroom, but I'm not going in mine. And then the other one that really you should look at is obviously moving the Dragic contract. And then the last one is the Boucher contract, which is expiring. We kind of got to look at. I'm going to try and be able to use the trade exceptions, but as I'll show you, there's a conundrum there. I'll explain it. It has to do with just simple mathematics and the salary cap. So it has to do with the fact that we're right on the cusp of this. So I'll show you why that's a conundrum. We have to make a first move and then we can potentially get into those. But my whole thing is that I want to get to using those contracts. That's what my trade deadline wish list would be to take advantage of some of those. What the hell do I mean by special moves? This has to do with some of the salary cap stuff that we talked about earlier in the video. So you can go back to the timestamps and refresh how that works. But specifically, the part we want to review is how we get from blue to green. You'll remember that it required tricky GMs using exceptions for reasons you can go into the over the cap. So let's take a look at one of the types of exception the Raptors have access to if they are sneaky. So this is called a trade exception. So here's our list. We have exceptions. So we're already using Chem Birch on the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which makes us a hard cap team, right? But here's these ones. Now, where did these come from? So if you look here, we got both of these last year at the trade deadline, and everyone wanted a home run trade. We got Gary Trent Jr. for Powell, which seems like a home run now, but back then it didn't. But then we had these two little ones. We had TD and Matty Thomas get shipped out. We got second round picks for both. Delano Banton and David Johnson. There's at least 2 home runs from the trade deadline last year. And we haven't even talked about these exceptions yet. They're like superpowers, okay? They're tools you could use to improve your team and exceed the salary cap. Okay, so if you look at the value, here's how they're calculated. Last year, the minimum salary for a player was $1.517 million. That's the difference between a second round draft pick of 0 value and these 2 players that were shipped out. So we have 2 of these. We're not allowed to stack them together, but we can use these combined with a player's salary on our roster. Let's say Svi here at 1.7. We could take Svi's 1.7 and combine it with the 1.5 trade exception to create a $3.2 million player from this list. Here's all the players in the NBA sorted by salary. I can go down to 3.2 million. So anybody up to 3.2 million, I could go and get them. So I could approach Detroit about Isaiah Stewart or Michael Carter-Williams. Can we go get Nikhil, right? I doubt it, but it's worth a try. Can we get Pokashevsky? Can we get Goga Patadze, Trey Murphy, Sterling Brown, Josh Green, Frank Jackson? All of these guys we could potentially go and target because we have these trade exceptions. Now, just to show you how they're calculated, here's one from the Kyle Lowry trade. It's actually kind of straightforward. I'll just bring up my trusty calculator here. Okay, and you'll see I already have 4.833 on the calculator. How is that calculated? What I did was I took Kyle's salary at the time of the trade last year, which is 26 million, and then we subtract the contracts we brought in. So we subtract Goran's 19,440,000 and Precious's 2.7. Where is it here? 2.71180 equals, and you'll see it's precisely the same as this trade exception. So we could take Kem Birch's $6.3 million and combine it with this $4.8 million, and we could be targeting a $10 million player off of the NBA's list of players. We could make that trade, but there's a glitch. We can't do it right now. And here's why. Thank you, calculator. So here's the glitch. Right here is our position relative to the luxury tax threshold. Right now, we don't have enough room. We would need 1.517 million to use either of these two, and we would need 4.8 million below the luxury tax to use the Kyle Lowry trade exception. The only ones that are ticking time bombs that we lose if we don't use them are the first two. So I would personally, if I'm the Raptors, be interested in using those trade exceptions, which would mean an initial trade where I potentially move something like Sfima Hailu of 1.7, get it off my books in exchange for, say, a second round draft pick, just like we did with Matty T and Terrence Davis last year. Then I would have the cap room to move either Yuta or Bonga combined with my trade exceptions of 1.5, and then I could be targeting a $3 million player from the list. Okay? And if we cleared enough cap space relative to the luxury tax, we could potentially get an even more expensive player and move something like Kem or Chris Boucher to do so. Okay? So we could do that. We can use these exceptions, but we need to be below the luxury tax by the amount of the trade exception in order to use it. Because as soon as you go in the luxury tax, you can't use these anymore. So that's what I'm watching for the Raptors to do. A small trade for a second rounder, followed by player swap that uses these exceptions. I hope that makes sense. It's yet another way sneaky GMs can get from floor to beyond cap using exceptions, or as I like to say, special moves. Get ready, because we're about to start the trade machine. First, for those of you that aren't familiar with some of the online tools that you can use to research trades, I'm going to show you a couple of the sites I like to use. For those of you that already are familiar with them or have some you like to use yourself, you can skip ahead to the next section in the timestamps titled Home Runs. For the rest of you, here's a couple sites I like to use. And remember, do your research, because if you post down below, but you're sending a rebuilding team into the luxury tax threshold, it's not a realistic trade. So just because the trade machine says success does not mean it's realistic. So pay attention to what we've learned. So I'm gonna recommend Spotrac. I'll show you the look of it. It's great because it gives all of these CBA things really handily right in front of you. I like Basketball Reference, especially for the hyperlinks from the players' names, because you'll recognize I've used cut-ups of this before. This is a great site for this. It just gives so much nice bio information right off on the player, and I love that. It even gives their nicknames. So this is a fun one. And if you're gonna bookmark one more, I'd recommend HoopSite, because I love that they player code all of the qualifying offers and team options. So you have to decide for yourself. I also use HoopSite to find the rankings of the player salaries. I really like this, where you can just scroll down with them in order. It's really helpful for saying, hey, I've got 10 million bucks I want to go outgoing. What can I buy with that? And then again, using Spotrac, you can rank all of the teams based on their team salary cap, which is super helpful. Like, here's all the teams in the luxury. In fact, here's a little anecdote. The Clippers, why did they trade to get Norman Powell? Because they're so into the luxury tax that they cannot justify missing the playoffs. So they went and got Covington and Powell from a team who's blowing it up. And that brings us to the site that offers all of us this ton of fun, the trade machine. And I'm gonna recommend Fans Pro for this. So what you do is you enter your different teams. This site is fantastic because it has all of the CBA stuff in it, including those trade exceptions we talked about. If you're able to use them, it will automatically do it. The thing is, you won't be able to use those trade exceptions with the Raptors' current salary situation because, as I said, we're too close to the luxury tax. So you can try them, but it won't let you, which is a good demonstration. So go ahead and try that. So to kick things off, I want to show you guys something that I was talking about with someone in the forums today. So I was having an awesome conversation with someone from a Ball is Life forum, and he was saying that Houston's screwed because they're stuck with the John Wall contract and they'll never move it. And what I said to him is, depending on what type of team you are, the John Wall contract is one of the best contracts in the NBA. Raphael Stone of Houston was super smart to go get it, and I'm going to show you something to get the trade juices flowing that demonstrates a really important point that I've been trying to make throughout this entire Bible of a video. And that's that everything is relative. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And when we make trade proposals in the trade machine, we have to remember that different teams are at different stages. And just because we like a player doesn't mean that player is available. And we certainly can't make a trade with another team who's rebuilding that puts them in the luxury tax. It's simply not going to happen in real life. So to prove this theory of relativity to you, we're going to start off with what is generally considered to be one of the worst contracts in basketball. So the John Wall contract, to me, is one of the most important contracts and best contracts in all of NBA if you're a rebuilding team. If you choose to blow things up this season, John Wall's contract is the holy freaking grail. And let me show you why. So let's say you're the Rockets, okay? And it's 2 years left on Wall. They now have done a pretty good job of bringing in some pieces. What can they get with John Wall's contract becomes the question. And the answer is, I'm making a call to Portland. Are you really blowing this thing up? Because I can afford to give you John Wall for you to blow things up and give you a 2-year window to create a new team. The Rockets have all of these picks, so they would sweeten the pot. And maybe if you're the Blazers, you want them to throw in like Josh Christopher, Garuba. And if you're the Blazers, you can start your rebuild and have a window of 2 years, which lines up with the Bledsoe contract you just took off the books for the Clippers. So in this way, every contract, even the ones that seem crazy, are very, very valuable in the NBA. Now let's get to our home runs. Okay, so home runs are relative, but what about the Raptors home runs? We're like a cusp playoff team, and we're on the rise. So a home run for us is a Bloody Larry, or at least some freaking banners in the ceiling. So what is a home run ball to us? And to do it, we have to remember our maxims, guys. Buy low, sell high. We're gonna have to give something up to hit this home run. Who has had the best seasons and gone from nothing to something? Well, let's show you what would have been considered a complete grand slam last year. So this year, you can easily take the Dragic contract and Gary Trent Jr., who is definitely on the rise, and send him over for Ben Simmons. What would this give the Raptors? Let's take a look. So you might scoff at this, but then you'd have Ben, Pascal, Fred VanVleet, OG, Scottie, Boucher, Birch, Achua, and you would do all of this while still remaining under the luxury tax threshold. In fact, you would do so such that you would free up some trade exception money. So this is a doable trade. But maybe you're like me and you're not into Ben. Maybe Ben's not a home run to you. Who should you go for? Let's try this. Now this is a definite home run if you're a Damian Lillard man. Like I said, the Blazers are maybe blowing shit up, and if they're going with the youth movement, they're gonna be taking calls about Dame. That's a big contract to have to move, and we got a player on the rise. Now, you might not want to do this because of all the draft capital it would take to do it, assuming this is the price. This is essentially 3 first-rounders, right? With 2 first-rounders lottery protected and then Gary Trent Jr. But take a look at what this does for your team if you're the Raptors. You get a shooter in McLemore coming off the bench, and you would have Damian Lillard, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG, Scottie Barnes, Boucher, Birch, Flynn, and Achua with these contributors on the sidelines going into the playoffs, guys. Are you kidding me? This is a potential home run that we could hit. Okay? But you gotta give something up. You gotta give something up that you love. Okay? You might even have to give up Banton. We are literally entering your parents' room right now, okay? Talking about this. But you have to talk about this. This is a Kawhi, right? Damian Lillard is like that caliber of a player. He would definitely make us a challenger for the next 3 years. Okay, what other home runs have I got? I'll give you one more. Hello, can I speak to Vladdy, please? This is Vladdy. Can I offer you a Buddy and Bond special? Not today, Vladdy, but I got something that's gonna pump you up. I'm looking to fleece the Kings. Okay, this is not a fleece. This is a realistic trade. Gary Trent Jr. with his value high. They get to wash some money with the Goran Dragic contract, which they desperately need in Sacramento. Then we give them 2 first-rounders, lottery protected. We're not allowed to do consecutive, okay? There's a thing called a step-in clause in the NBA. You can't trade consecutive years there. But look what we get back. We get Keita, who's a young up-and-comer. We get Marvin Bagley, who we can extend, and he is a modern center. He is a modern center. I'm scared of Bagley by himself, but if you bring him in with an elite player like De'Aaron Fox, I feel like his chemistry will come to suit the Raptors. Whereas if you bring him in on his own, I'm really concerned about his attitude. But if you bring him in with a buddy, I'm okay with this. Take a look at what this would do to the Raptors roster. You'd be sitting there, now you got your center that is a bit of a project, but he can run the floor, guys. I don't want any centers that can't run the floor. Don't bring me Nurkic. Don't bring me Embiid. I don't even want fucking Embiid. Don't bring me any centers that can't run with us. Then I got Fox, Pascal, Fred VanVleet. Can you imagine this fucking roster? Tell me you wouldn't give up Gary Trent Jr. and 2 freaking first rounders to get this. They're ready to blow shit up in Sacramento. That, my friends, is a home fucking run. So that's 3 potential home runs for me, guys. I do not consider Myles Turner a home run or any of those guys. I'm not interested in big fat guys that can't keep up. I'd love to see your home runs. Show me in the comments below. Convince me. What should we do? Are you going to send away Spicy P or Fred VanVleet? What do we do? What's a home run ball? Who's got the balls to show me some Scottie Barnes Dragic trades? Ew, that's like watching my own parents get it on. I don't want to see that, but put it in the comments below if you work something out that you might actually do. Let's take a look at some doubles and triples and some 3-team deals that the Raptors might be able to pull off this year.
Boom, baba, boom, baba. Boom, baba, boom, baba, boom.
All right, so the home run balls are a little bit sensational, but you'd be crazy not to inquire about those kind of players when you see those teams potentially blowing up their teams, right? And if it takes one of our top names to bring in a guy like Lillard, honestly, I'm not sure I would move anybody else with Gary Trent Jr. I'd do 2 picks and a player for Damian Lillard. Just saying. So, and I'd do the same for De'Aaron Fox, I think. Just saying. I think those 2 players would put us over the top. Let's get to number 6, because I've spent all this time trying to get you to see inside my brain, and I appreciate you following me through it. If I had done the same research as an employee of the Raptors organization, I would come to the conclusion that my game plan, in order to uphold kind of our mantras, would be the following. In keeping with number 6 here, what move or series of moves gets us the Larry? My move or series of moves is this. Move number 1, uphold the culture. Make sure the players understand that you're walking the walk. Number 1, all 3 number 6, you can review them. We want to instill that this is a real place where these things happen. If you want to be a part of this and win a championship as a team, you stay here and you make sacrifices and you work your nuts off. That's number 1. That's move number 1. So this year I don't upset the core. I don't do anything with it. So move number 2 is kind of a combo, and it's just a matter of exploring it. There's no guarantee that the team would even want to move these players. They're on league minimums. They're no burden to the system, and they would be great bench guys going forward. But nevertheless, I really want to try and use one of these trade exceptions. To do that, I got to make a little cap space. So this is a little combo move. Let me show you how it works. I want like ladies' choice across the league. Your choice of Utis Fee Bonga. Anyone interested in any of those, go ahead, try and turn it into a 1st round pick. But really, I just want a 2nd round pick for these guys. I don't want a player coming back, okay? ladies' choice, whichever one they want. Now, I want to talk to my top people in the front office and all of our assistants, and I want to talk to scouts and everything, and I want to say, of the 2 remaining players, what teams out there would like to have them, and do any of the players on this list fit in terms of a team being interested in swapping those players? So we can go all the way up to Nikhil here. 3.2. So we would have in between this, it's like 3.2 something. So, but be realistic. Campazzo's probably going to resign. Şengün's not going anywhere. Trey Burke's potential. But honestly, guys, look down the whole list. I don't give a shit. Bring me a player that's on here that can contribute off the bench that another team is willing to get off in exchange for whichever 2 players out of the 3 is remaining. Yuta, Svi, and Bonga. Now this is all predicated on the idea that you can make the core team feel like you're investing in them as a core by improving one of the bench players by doing this little move. And it could help spirits and all that sort of stuff. But it could also be a situation where you're taking a really good locker room guy away. I would not want to do that. Now, before I pull the trigger on Bonga, Yuta, Svi, 2 out of the 3, rhyme, I would actually make a personal phone call to San Francisco first to do something I said I wouldn't do. But never say never, guys. The math is just too perfect. I gotta make this phone call. So I need my little calculator, and if on the calculator you plug in the value of the trade exception, 1.517981 million, and then add to that $2,048,040, you wind up getting this number right here, 3.566 million with $21 attached to it. And that is the value of Malachi Flynn's contract, which I said I wouldn't move because his value's at a low and I know I can develop him. But if I can make a call, and a legit call, that would actually be good for both teams and say, how would you guys like the perfect understudy for Steph? He's a total team player. He's a great shooter, defensive first kind of guy, totally team first, accept his role, great attitude, Malachi Flynn. The reason I would do this particular trade, look at the math, guys. Sometimes things are just meant to be. So this would give us, again, look at the calculator, 3.566 million. Where does that put us? Literally $4,000 above Moses Moody. And I know what you're thinking. Moody's a really highly touted guy. Why would they do this for Malachi? Well, they need a guy like Malachi, and they got a glut of guys like this. They got Poole, Steph, Kuminga, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, all interchangeable at that position. They really just don't need Moody. That is the one exception to the rule where I said I would not trade Malachi Flynn. If I can do that and get Moses Moody, I'll bring him right in. He knows Scottie Barnes very well from their times playing for the national team and Mulvert Academy. So away you go. Giddy up, guys. That would be a clutch deal. That's 2A. If I have to settle for the other guys and bring in like a shooter for the bench or something, great, 2B. The goal is see if I can use those exceptions to improve the team. Okay, so move number 1, just build confidence in the core, show some faith in them, let them go to the playoffs, and build self-efficacy. In an ideal world, you're flipping Malachi Flynn plus one of the 3 small contracts, Yuta, Bonga, Svi. One of them gets sacrificed as well with Malachi to bring in Moses Moody. If you can't do that, I would still try and move one for a clutch shooter or something like that to help the bench. But I don't know the locker room. Maybe losing any of those 3 guys is bad for morale. I wouldn't do it if it was going to upset the ship. Now we're into move number 3. And this is my 3-way deals. And I gotta tell you, when I'm designing these things, I feel like I'm in a scene from Ocean's 11 about to pull off a big heist. In fact, let's go with that. Like, make no mistake, that's exactly what you're doing is pulling off a heist. You're taking a $19 million contract on a guy who hasn't played all year, and you're gonna go and convince another team that not only should they take this player, but they should be excited about it.
The crazy thing is, as long as you use 3 teams, you can make sure that there's a party that's actually interested in doing that. That's precisely what they're out on the prowl looking for. So we need a soaker team that's ready to eat the poop, okay? So we need someone ready to eat that, but guess what? That soaker team has poop too. We're gonna eat their poop, okay? That's our role. We're gonna eat the soaker team's poop. So we're gonna give Dragic to the soaker team because they want it. We're gonna take their poop, and there's gotta be a third team to make it work, and that is a team that wants to go for it this year. And they're likely to have a little poop for us to eat as well. That's the equation. Let's take a look at what I found.
So for this first one, I got to give a shout out to Slam VS, who I was discussing this type of trade with over on Raptors Digest. He and I were kind of going back and talking about what kind of filler contracts could we take on that would also serve as bench players. And we had a discussion about Evan Fournier and Spencer Dinwiddie, and we both agreed we weren't sure those guys would be willing to come off our bench. Dinwiddie especially. Everything about their games and physical attributes works fine. It's a situation where we both agreed we're not sure their attitude would make them a proper 6-man. So the safer bet, he mentioned in Raptors Digest, and I completely agree with him. So let's take a look at this first trade now. This first one involves us, then the motivated buyer for the Goran contract, the Knicks, and then a soaker team, the Thunder. And this is a little different because there's no contender here. We're actually a contender. So we're looking to improve our bench here and move off of Goran's contract and maybe save some money to extend Boucher in the offseason or something like that. So let me show you what this looks like. All right, so the Knicks are eating the Goran contract, and then they want to get off their 2-year deals, okay? We're going to take the Burks deal that improves our bench significantly, I think. And why does OKC even get involved in this? They're going to soak the Kemba contract. That'll help keep them above the salary floor, okay? And then, you know, we could make a play for something like Lugan's Dort, but we're going to have to give something up. So let me just show it to you without first. Let's say these guys are in for like Quentin Grimes to the Thunder, okay? And to make it work, we have to throw them like Bonga. You don't want, the problem with these trades is sometimes you overvalue your own players, okay? So like, you got to make it realistic. They're rebuilding. I even think the Knicks might have to throw in a pick here, or we might have to. Okay, so there's an example of something that you might be able to do. And I don't know, like maybe we don't need Bonga to do this, but I'd rather err on the safe side. If you wanted to use it in an opportunity, because you're dealing with Sam Presti and OKC anyway, to try and get Lou Dort, I think it's a great play. Like you could totally try and make a play, but you're not going to get something from nothing from a guy that knows exactly who Lou Dort is. So you're going to have to give up picks or something to get Lou. The Knicks are an enigma to me. Like they've got a perfect old roster that should be blown up. They should really sell everything down. They should figure out who their mentors are going to be. So they need to figure out their Sherpas. And then they should get off of some of these big contracts, in my opinion. And, you know, RJ down is amazing. Like, keep Taj Gibson. He's like Van Gundy's favorite guy on there. And there's your, like, team culture guy, right? You keep Taj there to groom the next batch, and away you go. Okay, so the second one is so cool because I'm going through, and I wanted to save this one for last. My second one was involving the Cleveland Cavaliers, us and the Pacers. And the Cavs and the Pacers just finalized the Rubio trade. So I was looking to get us a piece of that, but it's too late. They've swapped Rubio for Karis LeVert. Fucking cool, man. Like, expiring contracts. This is what we're looking to do. And this just assures us that the Pacers are ready to blow up some of their team. So here's another deal that could work. I'm going to send Sabonis to the Mavs. And I know they got Kristaps, but I'm going to do it anyway. They could take their pick. I had this designed yesterday before I started filming today, and I had it designed where they could take their pick of Domantas Sabonis, Myles Turner, or LeVert. So LeVert's obviously off the table, so they could do Myles Turner or Sabonis here. I think that the Pacers would rather them do Sabonis, but I don't know. Let's draw it out with Sabonis and see what happens. Our interest is TJ McConnell, okay? the Pacers' interest is the Goran Dragic contract, okay? And to make it work, Dwight Powell, the Canadian, needs to come to the Raptors. And then incentives, I feel like they need to get off some money, if I remember correctly. Okay, so the Soaker team, the team that... Okay, so we're going to take Poop from these other two teams. We're going to take McConnell, who I like, who I think is a perfect bench player, and his money's just right. Powell, who will be a bench player for 2 years. Money's perfect, gives us a 6'10" guy that can run the court like a horse and rebound and get on the offensive glass. He's a total pest. They get Sabonis for their run this year, and in exchange, they give Moses Brown to the Pacers, plus Boban needs to get off of their books. So they're going to eat Boban. So they're going to have to pay the Pacers to take the Boban contract to finish this. I maybe have it overvalued here, but I gave them 2 number ones and Moses Brown for taking Boban off their books and Sabonis. And why do we get a return here? Because you'll notice the only thing we've thrown in the ring is freaking Dragic. We've done it because these other teams would love it. And guess what the Pacers do right after this deal is done? They fucking buy out Dragic and the Mavs get him. So the Mavs actually get Sabonis and Dragic in the buyout market with this deal. So we facilitate the Mavs doing this, so the Mavs pay us too. They might even have to pay us a second rounder or something here. First of all, Bamba, I'm going to watch a couple more games with him. I've watched Orlando quite a bit this year. I really like Orlando, but I haven't focused on whether Bamba can run the floor. We don't need to stretch big in the three-point sense, which is what he is, and we don't do a lot of rim protection anyway. We're kind of we're hanging that pawn. If you watch the Marathon Men video I did that explains that, we're kind of hanging that pawn. We don't want slow guys that can't get out in transition. We want the opposite on our team. I'm not sure Bamba's a good fit for the money, but I'm intrigued by his frame. I saw a Raptors Digest report saying they're less interested because they want to trade Bamba. Maybe you don't want Bamba. For me, it's the opposite. If they're getting off of Bamba, that means we should be able to get him for cheap because he's up for a contract renewal. So I'm actually more interested in Bamba because they want to get off of him. Whereas if I were initiating that trade inquiring about Bamba, I wouldn't be into that because the price would be higher. Because they'd be like, oh, you want Bamba. Same thing with Gary Harris. They have no incentive to trade us Gary Harris. And do you guys really want to re-sign Gary Harris? I don't. So they have no incentive to do that. And Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross is the fabric of the Orlando Magic's mentor program. So Jeff Weltman did a great job keeping T. Ross, who is a next man up, know your role, be ready off the bench kind of guy, to mentor and bring kind of a good attitude to all their young guards and forwards. Okay, so I don't see Terrence Ross getting moved this year, but he's a very valuable piece. He totally could. I just think Weltman would have moved him last year if he wanted to. He could have totally got rid of him last year. And then the last one I want to do is I almost pulled the last remaining hair I have out watching an Amateur Hour Sports video. Jacob, shut up, buddy. You're a good guy, but sometimes you say crazy shit. This is a total hot take. He did a video talking about how we're going to draft our next center in this year's draft. And if you are drafting in this year's draft the thing you need to fix your problems on your team, you're going to lose your job as a GM. So let me illustrate that point. You guys aren't wrong to see a hole in our franchise at the center position. But let me remind you where that hole came from. We actually knew it was coming and drafted someone to be filling it years ago, Jakob Poeltl. But we moved him because we had an opportunity to go for it and win a Larry, which was successful. So the reason we have a hole at center is because we had to move Jake Puddle to win a Larry, okay? You do not draft for need that year in the draft. If you're not seeing what you're going to need years in advance based on your contract windows, you're not going to be a GM. So here's a little Jake Puddle trade I put for you guys because I know you're all enthusiasts. I actually think he's well suited to our offense and he could keep up with us. So this would be a great draft pick. There's a reason the Raptors thought he would be good. He's amazing in the pick and roll. He's got such good hands. Great on the offensive glass. He's exactly the type of player we need. Even though I feel like he's a touch big, to run the floor, I think he can totally handle it. And I mean, he's just an incredible guy on top of everything. So in this one, same combination. We want someone that wants to get off of their contracts. Kemba comes off the books. They buy out Dragic. Landale just balances the trade with Taj Gibson. And in this particular situation, we both give the Spurs a number 1, and they get Quentin Grimes, who is a really nicely framed young guard from the Knicks. But the Knicks retain the vast majority of their young talent, okay? And their current Julius Randle window, which they seem determined to hang on to. They should be blowing this shit up in New York, but whatever. They've got such a good young team, they should be rebuilding. Like, they should be getting off of Randle. Randle might get traded. Okay, the one contract that I seem to disagree with a lot of Raptors fans on is the Boucher contract, and it has to do with what I told you guys about the salary cap. So if you don't understand the salary cap stuff, go back to that section of the video. This has to do with the most exciting scenario that I can think of. If we take the Dragic contract and manage to move it for equal value for contracts that go beyond this year, okay, so 2-year players, 3-year players that are usable, bench players that help us win a championship, okay? Okay, we want 2 players, probably not just 1. So no Myles Turners. I don't want fat guys that can't run the court. Then, and we do equal value, okay? Or we do a bird rights player that we can extend that helps us win a championship, similar to what we got with Gary Trent Jr. last year. Either scenario is perfect because we have the bird rights, that is considered an exception. Again, if you don't remember what that is, it is a reason teams require to go into the green from the blue and above. So one of those exceptions is called Larry Bird rights. And if you have the rights on this player, it was invented to keep Larry Bird in Boston. Boston mismanaged its money, so Larry Bird was technically going to have to leave the team unless they created a reason for him to stay. So they created bird clauses, okay? It's a whole family of stuff that you can look up yourself. But what it does is it allows the team that has the bird rights to give him more years on their contract. Other teams can only give 4, we could give 5. And more money per year that you've had him. So we can go into the threshold and augment our franchise window. And we can also do this on Boucher. So Boucher is a diamond in the rough. I wouldn't want to trade him unless I had to. I think I can win a championship with Boucher on my team. So if I can bring in 2 players from Dragic deal that are contributors from the bench, plus Boucher, and extend them and go into a luxury tax era, I'm up for it. Now, we need to look at his contract because people love Boucher's contract, and it's a good reason why. So ring-chasing teams, who we've discussed, would love a guy like Boucher for only $7 million, and he's on an expiring contract. They would love this to hunt for a ring. So there's a couple players I would totally target. I would feel, if the Raptors don't feel like re-signing Chris and going into the luxury tax, I would happily deal with Brooklyn for Kessler Edwards. If you just got me straight up Kessler Edwards for Boucher, that would be a win for me, okay? I think he's the perfect frame and the perfect attitude. I scouted him last year when I was scouting all the draft stuff. Kessler Edwards would be great. Another one from Golden State, another luxury tax team, would be Moses Moody. And I've already explained why I love Moody. He would be a great fit for us and has relationships on the team. But those are the 2 exceptions that I would move Boucher for if the team does not want to enter a luxury tax era. But I don't know why we wouldn't enter the luxury tax era. We're on the cusp of beating all these teams, and you do not want to wait 3 seasons while they figure out how to deal with your small ball lineup. We want to strike while the iron's hot. We want to be a dark horse that they don't know how to deal with. I say go for it right fucking now. And that's why I'm giving you my contingency plan. Goran's a $19 million player that if we can't move him for the right bench players of equal value to stay roughly where we are, and then extend Chris by going into the luxury tax using his bird rights, my contingency plan is as follows. You offer Goran the money Chris is making this year because you have his bird rights, and mention that he can either stay on the team or we'll move him because he's at a reasonable value, okay? And then you just swap that salary with Boucher. My dad used to use the saying all the time, robbing Peter to pay Paul. In this case, we're robbing Dragic, who deserves to go down in salary, to pay Chris. I'm not saying give him all the 19, just some of it. We can use the rest elsewhere. Guys, remember the mantras. Try and keep in mind who we are as a franchise when you make your trade proposals. Show me what you come up with. Show me some home runs. Show me what you would do. Is there anyone out there that would blow up the whole Raptors franchise and go get that John Wall contract? Show me what that looks like. That's pretty cool. So have some fun. Enjoy the trade deadline. Go Raptors, who are kicking ass, guys. Sleeping giant going down this year. Thanks as always, guys. And remember, it's all about the Larrys. Kawhi, can you pass that popcorn, buddy?
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
That's bullshit, Kawhi. I made that popcorn. This is Chef's Kiss approved. Mwah!